Okay, so back here with this Marlin 9mm Camp carbine, Model 9. And we're going to put it back together, and I'm going to show you some of the difficulties we ran into there. Like I said, when you go to reassemble it, getting everything lined up properly. Typically, if it's just a single item, I'll make some sort of slave pin. But in this case, you're aligning so many things at once that it'll be bigger pain in the butt to try and do that than it will just be to fight it the way it is. A couple of quick notes. Like I said, that detent ball and its spring did come out of its little pocket there when I was cleaning it. Like I figured out, it was just a bunch of schmoo that was holding all that, keeping it from coming out. So we'll start and just put that guy right back in there, and then when we do that, we can put the safety back in. On the safety, you'll notice those two detents, and that's what that little ball rides in and gives you that positive click. And that will just slide right back in there, and you'll probably have to depress that detent ball just a little bit and slide the safety over it. And you'll know when it's in there correctly, because one, you have to align that hole for the pin to go through, and what helps though is that detent ball will keep it from falling out. So you got that going for me. Everything else is just kind of the way, backwards of how we took it apart. Your coil spring there, and that's for that magazine disconnect that'll go in. We'll drop the trigger down in there, and we will place that coil spring in there that detents against your disconnector. And like I said, it just falls in there into that little pocket. Go ahead and drop your disconnector in behind it. That's probably one of the hardest parts to keep aligned during the whole process, is this disconnector. Hammer can go down in there. Oh, excuse me. You'll want to put this piece here, that's part of that magazine disconnect. You'll want it so that those two legs face backwards, and drop it in. It'll align with the hammer pin there. And then you'll take the disconnect itself, and you can slide it in. On that, let's see if I can get it back out here. The way that magazine disconnect is going to interact in there, just so you know how it goes in there, is this little round piece on that will interact like that. That's how it interacts. So you can put the magazine disconnect itself, drop it in there, and then put the leg of that, up underneath so that it falls in. Either way, but I mean, just so you understand how that's supposed to fall in there. Then what you can do is take your ejector and slide it in there, and now you can put your magazine disconnect. You'll align the holes, and that should align pretty easy, and that pin will just push right in. Take your second pin there, pop that in there. Shouldn't have any issues. The hammer, you can slide that in there. Your little coil spring for your feed ramp, it just sits in there. And then you take the feed ramp, and like I said, it's a little snug, so you should be able to slide that in there without causing too many problems. It's going to want to fight that spring a little bit, so just kind of slide it in until you're ready to put all the rest of this stuff back together. That's really kind of it. And then you're going to take your plate, and you're going to want to start it in all of its respective holes, and just kind of hold it there So the trigger's not aligned. Let's see if I can push that forward a little bit. Let's see, magazine disconnect needs a little bit of finagling to get there. Oh, see, there we go. Let's see, trigger came out of alignment a little bit. And you're going to have to just kind of play with this thing back and forth a little bit. There we go. Align that feed ramp. And do this, I mean, really as slowly as you can get it to go. Like I said, push that little punch in there, and there you go. You've got all that all lined back up, so your parts don't come falling out. Now is when you'll put your hammer return spring in. The orientation is like that, so the front of the spring, that little U shape there, faces forward, and these little legs face backwards, and you want the coils facing up this way. And just set it down in there. You have to squeeze it in just a little bit. And you might have to take something and press it down in there. Take your pen, slide it through. Looks like I got it caught. There we go. Just like that, and that way your trigger return spring. Now push the hammer forward, and you're going to take your hammer strut and its spring and that plate and slide it into place here. Excuse me, I got that. Oh, that's right. Get that clicked in there. And now you can take your other plate and just line up all on the pins there and squeeze it in. That hammer strut's what's stopping us right now. There we go. So everything's all in there, all squeezed together. Take your little E-clip, just lay it down on there. Just take a punch and, oh, don't lose it. These things can be tricky sometimes, but pop that back in there, and that way it's all back together. And now what you can do is cock your hammer back, there you go. Oh man, I screwed up big time. Remember that disconnector I was telling you about that's a pain in the butt to get aligned? Yeah, guess what I didn't do. So, now we got to start all over again. Here I thought this was going so easy and I was going to be so smooth with it. I'm going to leave that trigger spring back in there and see if I can't do this without. I'm going to pull it just back far enough to let that disconnector so I could put it in place. Freaking pliers are magnetized, so I'll do something to fix that. And now we get to fight all of that stuff going back in now. I think I got it. Yep, there we go. Like I said, make sure that disconnector is lined up. That thing is just a pain to fight. There we go. What on God's green earth? Oh, yeah. Dumbass. Magazine disconnect. I hate those things, man, but yeah, there we go. Put it on safe. Okay, we're good. But yeah, there's your fire control group put back together. And on your receiver, remember we got that little coil spring that's gonna fall in its perspective hole here on up by the barrel, and it fits in there pretty tight, so you're gonna have to push it down and make it kind of want to stay. Guide rod and spring there. Same thing. Put that little tail in back behind there. Make sure your charging handle's facing the right direction when you slide it in. You should just be able to pull it back and stick that in there. The little coil spring decided it wanted to come back out. Come on, guy. And this, when you put your bolt stop back in there, it's going to slide underneath that little groove there, and it'll go in. And we'll worry about aligning everything there in just a second. But fire control group, slide it down on top and push it in. One other little note too is when you're putting this back together, you might have to push back on that feed ramp there, so it'll click kind of where it's supposed to. Yeah, shit. There we go. Get that lined up. What the fuck's going on here, man? What the crap's going on? I'm gonna try and figure this out real quick. Okay, got it figured out there. What I had done is the spring that goes in here for the bolt stop. I mixed that coil spring up with the coil spring that's supposed to go down in here in the disconnector, and the one in the disconnector has a kind of a smaller end and a fatter end, and that smaller end is what fits into that recess into the trigger itself. And it's larger diameter wire coil than the one that goes here, and that's why I couldn't get this guy to go down in there like it was supposed to get things lined up. But I got that figured out. We'll try this again. Got that lined up. Now I can just push that back into where it's supposed to be. Pin pops right in. No problems. Like I said, that screw on the back there has that slightly larger. It doesn't matter what side that goes in, which direction I should say. But that's all there is to that there. And then we'll take our stock and we'll slide it back on. There's that, and that's all there is to getting it back together. I will say that there's something I didn't quite mention when I showed you the buffer that's back here in the back and fits into the receiver itself. On this gun, and it's not uncommon, those little plastic buffers, they get old and they get real brittle and they crack real easy. So when I was cleaning the bore on this, just the brush having bumped into it just hard enough, and it just split into like 100 pieces. And it's not uncommon. You can pick those parts up and replace them. The new ones, the new production ones, are actually a rubber, kind of a hard rubber instead of plastic. So they're a little bit better and they hold up better. Probably last a little bit longer too without crumpling on you. But considering the age of the gun, you know, it's not too bad. It's to be expected on something like that, especially when they get hot. All those plastics get brittle. But that's all there is to that. On this one here, I've already talked to the customer and he knew that he needs to order another one there. We'll order one and get it installed. So this gun will actually come apart again once the part comes in. And there's that. Other than a little bit of confusion, even us, quote, pros, run into issues sometimes, and you just got to kind of pay attention to what you're doing. If I was not in such a rush to get this back together, I certainly would have figured that out. Anyways, that's all there is to it, man.